Hey everyone, let me introduce you to someone I met recently, Brodie. He has a passion that he has turned into business essentially. But first, I'll let him explain what he does and who he is. And he lives in all the way up in Toronto, by the way. So, right, Toronto, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, Brodie, please tell us about a little bit about you.
Hey everyone, and thank you, Raju. Yes, I'm Brody. I do live in Canada, but that is kind of more temporary these days because of the pandemic. I was actually typically I'm traveling or living in Europe, but here I am back with my family, and it's been really great. So I work as a photographer as well as a coffee consultant and an advisor, and I've been able to merge these two passions of mine into one. So yeah, I can definitely get into that as well.
Awesome, perfect segue. So yeah, so tell us, how did you, you were into photography and then you were working somewhere in the coffee business and all of a sudden, somehow you turned, essentially you got passionate about coffee is what my understanding is. And then that somehow turned into business. This might be a great insight to a lot of people, especially during this time, how you can turn something, a passion into business. So yeah, give us a little bit on how you did that and what do you do now? How do you help people in the coffee business essentially scale their business up?
Totally. And I think that speaks to just the general sense of the economy these days in the world, and how people are turning their passions into business, or at least, making their own business for themselves. I mean, I've heard a few stats. I know in the States and here in Canada, they're expecting to lose a lot of jobs. And what they found was there was actually, a surplus of jobs created. At least that's what the stats are saying. And and it's been supposed that it's because a lot of people are creating work for themselves. And so, that's what I've just been used to over the last few years, because with my desire to continue traveling, or start traveling and continue traveling, I just recognize that the typical work environment, and for my desire for flexibility and working on my own terms, it just resulted in me being a freelancer and then eventually an entrepreneur as well. And so, yeah, to tell the very short story of how I got into photography, I moved to China when back in 2012. I was living there for a year, and I decided to get into photography during that time because a big passion of mine was actually just storytelling itself. And I recognized that if I knew how to take better pictures, I could tell a better story. And I practiced writing and I started a blog. And so it was through that time in China that I started to get into photography and video, for the sense of, how can I tell the best story here? And then fast forward back in Canada, got heavily into, very interested in the coffee industry, into specialty coffees particularly, because I always, I saw my parents making coffee at home every single morning in a French press, and it was like, or they go to, local coffee shop or like the big chain coffee shops, and I never really understood it. I didn't understand what's the allure, why, it seemed like an addiction to me. It seemed kind of just like a habit, until I discovered this whole world of specialty coffee and how there's a lot more intention put into brewing coffee. People using different scales and grinders and like pouring kettles and like different temperatures, and then the local roasters like supporting a local business, but a local business which is also supporting a foreign business, which is typically producing coffee in developing countries and in communities that are marginalized, based on our difference in geography and also economy and demographics. So I just thought that this whole story needs to be told more, and I just, that's when I transitioned, started transitioning as how can I use my photography to tell this story, not only on the cafe level, but I started traveling and I started going to the farm level as well. And so throughout all this time, working, oddly as a barista on the odd occasion, as well as, having photography projects come up that were actually facilitating my travel, and then being able to, on my own terms, go visit people and really dig into what is their passion, what drives their passion within the coffee industry. Why did you start a cafe? Why did you start a coffee roastery? Why are you working on a coffee farm? Is it because generations back your family always did that, or did you come here, to this land because you were passionate about helping the local people. And so, yeah, I used photography and video to be able to tell this story, started a YouTube channel, and, continued my coffee blog at the time, which is called The Nomad Barista. Both of them are called The Nomad Barista. So through that time, I was able to connect with many different coffee professionals around the world. And, it was actually while I was living in Barcelona. So I moved to Barcelona in 2016, after a bit of travel throughout Asia again. And I stayed there for a year. And I worked as a barista and I worked as a photographer, and I started consulting for other coffee shops or entrepreneurs who wanted to start coffee shops. And I was so, excited by it, being able to partner with these people who were very passionate about selling great coffee, but also bringing community together in a local urban space. And then, so through that, I was able to, continue consulting, moved back to Canada for a little bit, got into the local coffee scene there. So I started to build my network. I had a network in Europe as well as a network in North America. And also, over the next few years, developing a network in Asia and starting to, connect with Chinese coffee importers, roasters, Japanese, Korean, and also, recently this year, I took a trip back to India and also to Thailand. I visited with a few farmers there, and just seeing how this global industry is different in so many ways, but also, in specialty coffee, it's such a new industry and there's a lot of synergies. So through that time, fast forward to present day, and this is a very quick story timeline, but present day, I'm now focusing on two major areas of my business. One of them is one-on-one coaching and advising for, up and coming coffee businesses or established coffee businesses who just need to shift their perspective a little bit in terms of curating their products to the right audience, or new businesses that have, really, they no longer want to leave their business and their communication strategy up to chance. They want to be a lot more intentional about it. They want to connect with the right audience, and they want to, avoid making too many of the mistakes that you make along the way as an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, given my experience, with contacting and connecting with so many different coffee professionals, I'm now able to offer, these skills to a diversity of different coffee business owners, which is super exciting for me, because I'm the type of person who, and I'm sure like yourself, Raju, as an entrepreneur, you want to do so many things. Like, so many things are exciting. You want to have your hands in this, you want to have your hands in that, but you don't have time to do it all, right? And so working with these people one-on-one, it's really helped me to be able to learn a lot about what different people are doing, but also to offer my, my expertise and, skills and experience to be able to contribute to the industry in a much more impactful way. So yeah, it's been really exciting.
Awesome. So I guess, Cliff Notes version, like you kind of explain, how you would help a coffee business essentially. Is there a simple example you could give, like how you help someone grow their business? Not getting into too many details, obviously, but if you could.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest example, even for myself, was I had a business partner last year in Toronto. I was basically partnering with him to open a coffee shop. He had wanted to open a coffee shop for years. We finally found this space, and so for the first 3 months, we worked together day in and day out, building this coffee shop up from the ground. And he was lucky to have like a really beautiful big window in the front that people could come in and be halfway on the sidewalk and halfway inside. And so it created this really cool community space, and we were able to just like gain momentum that way. And now he's still pulling through strong, even through the pandemic. He's stayed up open the whole time. And so that was a really big, obviously he had to go through the winter period, and then, the period of people not being out in the streets anymore, not purchasing anymore. But I felt like we built a very strong foundation and a community base that people kept wanting to come back. Another example, one client that I'm working with right now, they're an importer based in Alberta, Canada. And so they bring in exclusively Mexican coffee, because at least in North America, and actually a lot of places in the world outside of Mexico, there's not a huge supply of really good quality, really nice, unique Mexican coffee. And I think this is just because in Mexico, they like to drink it a lot, and there's so many different regions and people who are drinking coffee there too. There's other reasons as well, but for them, their passion is to bring this coffee into Canada. And so I'm working with them through different strategies of like, how can you communicate your brand? How can you differentiate it from other green importers and other roasters who are also offering more diverse array of different coffee origins? But you're focusing on Mexican coffee. So how can we make this special together, through pop-ups, through giveaways, through your marketing and your branding, and through communicating with building your network within Canada and hopefully soon within the US. So yeah, we've been reaching some great success there too.
Awesome. So bottom line is, maybe, this is not technically coffee related, but what would you advise on people, like, because somehow you saw the opportunity and you took it, you kind of combined two different passions, like what would you advise to someone who's looking at it? Why did you get into it? Why did you believe that this is the thing? How did you come about getting into that whole genre, essentially?
Definitely.
The process, essentially.
Yeah, I think it takes, obviously I have certain priorities that maybe other people don't have, and this is something that I've had to realize over the years. In the early years, my priority was experience. It was travel. It was meeting people. But I wasn't owning cars. I wasn't owning houses, and I didn't have, a comfortable place to return home all the time. Sometimes I was sleeping on couches. Sometimes I was, I didn't have as much money in my bank. So it depends what your priorities are. I don't think those are the only criteria. Doesn't mean you have to live the way that I did. But it does mean that you have to prioritize. You have to prioritize what are your goals? Create those goals. And even if they're not concrete in the sense that in 10 years, I'm going to have this, this, and this, but at least putting yourself out there and leaving it up to your own inspiration, your own intuition. And like, honestly, if the best advice that I can give is just connect with more people. And that doesn't mean that like you of course you should always be networking, but that doesn't mean networking is solving all your problems.
Right.
But it's about connecting with people so that you can gain as much perspective as you can. Because by gaining perspective and understanding the way that other people think, you'll be able to make more informed decisions later on. And then the other thing that I would suggest, which would complement that, is just like really dig into your passions. Doesn't mean that you have to turn your passion into work. I think a lot of people don't want to do that because their passion is something that they do because they like it. They don't want it to be their work. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity there. And so, I mean, that's my approach. Is I like to take a much more holistic approach.
Right.
I like to, for me, people say, if you do what you love, you're never going to work a day in your life.
Right.
And then other people, I always say, if you do what you love, you work every single day of your life.
Right.
Because you're always doing something related to work.
Right.
But in some way, I like that approach more because it gives me a little bit more of a holistic goal rather than, okay, I want to have a bunch of money, or I want to look good in front of my friends, or these different things which could fade, right? So I don't know. I don't know if those are helpful, but that's kind of what inspires me, and I think that anyone out there, anyone who has a passion, anyone who has a vision, can find success as long as they don't give up on it and get organized. That's a really good thing. Maybe that means hiring a coach. Maybe that means finding a mentor. If the more serious that you take it, the more serious the outcome. And one guarantee that I offer to my clients, the guarantee is if you keep doing what you've always been doing, you're going to get the same results that you've always gotten.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Actually, you touched on a great point, which I'm a big believer in. Building more connections, not just networking. Building more connections is very important. That's a key point you made. Awesome. Thank you again for doing this, Brodie. Awesome information. And for anybody who is a coffee enthusiast or has a coffee business, or someone who knows somebody who needs to grow their coffee business, connect to Brodie. I'll post his LinkedIn profile and whatever contact information, his YouTube channel. on the above recording, and please connect to him. And again, thank you, Brodie.
Raju, thank you so much.